Am I still in Zoom?
We see ya.
I was about to say, I feel like I hear you. All right, I'm ready.
All right, it looks like everybody's in.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Gonna get started in about a minute just to give everyone an opportunity to sign in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope that everyone is having an awesome, what is today, Thursday? I feel like since I spend most of my time at home, the days just kind of mushing together. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to everyone. Going to do things just a little differently. If you've been on any of these sessions, typically we ask you to use the chat, and you can use the chat, but we've tried to keep this group pretty small so that we can actually encourage dialogue, conversation. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll get started in about a minute. If you could just go ahead and use the chat to let us know where you are Zooming from. Just go ahead and put that in the chat, where you are Zooming from. Finneytown, Highland Heights, Kentucky, awesome. Louisville, whoop, whoop, my hometown. Pleasant Ridge, College Hill neighbor, Cheviot, New York City, Upper East Side. Oh my goodness, I miss New York. That's the thing I miss most probably about travel during the COVID. Currently in Wakeman, Ohio. That sounds like a destination, like perhaps a lake, vacation destination. If so, I'm jealous. Goff Manor, Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor's a beautiful place. Pleasant Ridge, Crescent Springs, awesome. We have a nice, diverse group. We tried to keep this under 40 today. We had close to 40 people to sign up. Typically speaking, half the people who sign up come, even those who donate, go figure. But life happens. And so thank you so much for logging in. Thank you for joining. Wakeman, Ohio is a farming country. That can still be a beautiful place, middle of nowhere. I enjoy going off the grid sometimes. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this conversation. Two Black Men Speak is what we're calling it. We still have people joining, so I'll wait to get started as we admit those who are logging in. So go ahead, if you're in Cincinnati area, it's been a rainy, dark day all day. It's a good sit on the porch and think about life day. So welcome, welcome everyone. If you're just joining us, go ahead and put in your chat where you are Zooming from. Kate said it got cold for a minute today. I am fat. So I'm pretty much warm all summer, even when it's cooler. So I enjoy that part. Kate says I'm fat too. Fat people united. Yes. We have someone. Just 1 second. People are joining. All right, let's play a quick game for those of us who have our camera on. Just a quick, really, really easy game. Something that is within reach. I want you to just grab something that's interesting. Something that is within reach, the most interesting thing within reach, and just hold it up to the camera so that everyone can see. Ginger has an angry carrot. It's an angry carrot. Someone's knitting. Awesome. Kate, is that some type of bowl? Some type of vessel? I see a book.
It's an abalone shell.
It's an abalone shell.
And the opalescent interior.
Oh, I saw a really cool flamingo pillow. I see a book Maya's holding up. Hold the book back up, Maya. It's in her own ground. That's the Madam C.J. Walker book. I see a mug. I see some type of weapon. I see another mug. Okay, we have some cool stuff. Nothing too scary. Is that an apple? Oh, it's a tomato. That's a beautiful tomato.
It's the first tomato we got this season.
Oh, wow.
I'm real excited.
Are you in Ohio?
No, I'm Ann Arbor.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. It's a little late and down here, but that would make sense. So yeah, this is a bear. It is metal. It's on my desk. I have no idea why I bought it. I just saw it at Target on clearance one day and thought, I have to have it. And that is called consumerism, ladies and gentlemen. So awesome. Thank you for playing the weird game, the interesting game. This is the other thing I almost held up. It's a doggy toothbrush. Yep. You put it on your finger and yeah. So that's my life in 2 items. The weird bear and the doggy toothbrush. So thank you so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this conversation. We're calling it Two Black Men Speak, and very specifically, we wanted 2 different generations. A millennial. I'm either a old millennial or a young Gen Xer. I'm like a few years away, and so just for the purpose of this conversation, I said I'll be the millennium. And then we have Gordon, who joined us, about a month ago, Gordon?
Yeah, about a month.
About a month ago, the awesome 19-year-old who representing is Generation Z, I think is what they've dubbed your generation.
Yeah, Gen Z.
Gen Z. And so when I calculated, I'm 36, and I calculated how long ago it was that I was the same age as Gordon. And I thought, wow, I remember when I was like always one of the youngest people in the room, always one of the youngest people in the space. And it reminded me of when I invited all the young adults from my church over. And I realized these people they were born in the 1990s, were married and had kids, some of them, and mortgages and careers. And it made me feel really old that I was in a room. And so I'm just excited to have Gordon here, who is 19, Martin Luther King scholar at the awesome University of Louisville. MLK scholars are the creme de la creme. You have to be Black or brown, have a pretty high GPA. It's a full ride, and there's a scholar aspect to it. They do research, they do all kinds of stuff, community service. And so I got to speak to them, I guess last year, had an opportunity to come in and provide some inspiration in conversation with the MLK scholars. And I'm super, super excited that Gordon is back with us for this this particular moment. It's a really quick overview of what we do, why we do, and then we'll get into the conversation. So my name is Reverend Derek Terry. I see lots of familiar faces. I see a couple of new names, new faces. And I'm the pastor of the St. Peter's United Church of Christ in Pleasant Ridge in Cincinnati, Ohio. Been there for a while. And in 2016, we were really at a crossroads of understanding our identity as a church. I came to a church that historically was predominantly white. And then all of a sudden they found themselves being mixed, white, Black, Hispanic. We had a few Hispanic members at one time, young, old, Republican, Democrat, very, 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 very liberal, some pretty conservative ideas. And we were really trying to figure out who we were and what our identity was. And so we noticed that there was no one talking about race. Even where I come from in Louisville, Kentucky, race is sometimes one of those things that's whispered. And there are sometimes I've been in spaces where people will mention race and other people will get nervous or shy away from it. And of course, we thought we have to talk about this. And really, it was the election of the current president that kind of brought that to the forefront, because the campaigns brought a lot of stuff out that we hadn't seen in a while. And so we thought the church was a safe place to have those conversations. Like, if not church, then where? And it's really kind of helped us to form our identity as a church that stands up for something, that believes in something. We think that social justice and anti-racism is a moral obligation of people who call themselves Christian. And so that's my stance. Even though I'm very political, I don't use the pulpit as a political tool. I use it as a moral tool. There's certain things are right, certain things are wrong. I don't care what party you proclaim to be in. And so we've come to this this Zoom platform, because we can no longer do in person to have these conversations. And we actually find that it's kind of powerful, because people can slip in, they can turn on their audio if they want, turn on their video if they want, but to just be in the room and hear ideas that they may not ordinarily get to hear, and be introduced to perspectives that you may not ordinarily be introduced to. So with that being said, I'm going to ask Gordon if he would introduce himself, and then we will start to lay the foundation of what we're going to be doing in this conversation.
Thanks, Reverend Terry. As Reverend Terry said, my name is Gordon Rowe III. I'm an MLK scholar at the University of Louisville. Next year, I'll be going into my sophomore year of college. I'm a finance major with a minor in politics, philosophy, and economics. As far as social justice and social action, I'm really interested in the intersection between the economics of Black and Brown communities and how social justice and different social systems impact those economies, and then kind of just the lifestyles of Black and Brown people. So this conversation and the conversations in the past have been really relevant to kind of my passion and what I hope to do in the future. I'm looking forward to talking with you all today.
Awesome. So, like I said, we've tried to keep this group pretty small. We had just under 40 people sign up, and the calculation is about half show up. So we're right on par. We have about 20 participants. So with this number, we're going to open up for actual audio, video participation questions from individuals in the group. You don't have to go on video to ask your question, but you do have to let let us know. So you can use a little hand raise tool. I learned how to do this, and now it's gone.
You can't. You might not be able to see it because you're a host. It's
Yeah,
under
yeah.
reactions in your toolbar if you're a participant. So if you're on the computer, it's down at the bottom,
I
and
see
it
it
might be in
now.
the corner if you are on like a phone or tablet.
So you can use that, or you can put it in the chat. You can also privately chat to Kate. She's keeping an eye. Kate is our awesome, amazing person who helps us to do this when we do it. So you can send a question to Kate if you want to keep it private. But yeah, so if you would like to ask a question, we would love to do that. And we're going to keep the conversation going until it's over. So I want to start with the question for Gordon, and then we'll just keep this conversational and see where we go. Today, Gordon, we saw the final homegoing celebration for John Lewis, and I just wonder, like, I knew who my civil rights icons, mentors, like those people in history that I look up to, and I just wonder, who are those people for you that you look up to? And it doesn't have to be, at the national John Lewis level, but who are some of those people for you?
You would say kind of like in the civil rights, like the movement, that era?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or, whatever.
Yeah. In that era, I'm a big fan of both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I actually have a poster in my room that is the picture between both of them, because I believe that both of their philosophies, while they're different and they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to achieving justice and equal rights for Black people, both ways can be taken. And I just think that if you study just the context of what they were doing during that time and how much they were pushing against the grain, I just admire the sacrifices that they made, throughout their whole life, and ultimately sacrificing their lives to achieve social justice. And to me, just being committed to organization, being outspoken, doing things that they felt was right, even though it was wrong by a lot of people at the time. Because I think even with Martin Luther King, a lot of people will say, oh, he was widely accepted, or it's easy to accept him now. But during that time, he was a radical. So I just really respect people who go against that grain with a purpose and are just committed to it. And like I said, they made the ultimate sacrifice and sacrificing their lives ultimately for what they believed in. So that's those are my two.
I think I'll answer it as well. So, God, I can answer this one for an hour, right? But the people that I most quote and the people that I read the most are King. I study his papers. There's a website that Stanford has where you can literally study, look at every paper he's ever written that they have on file, like even letters to his mother when he was in the 4th grade. It's all on there and it's all for free. And then there's a bunch of seminary papers, and so you can see where he was at different points in his life. So King and James Baldwin, in part because I'm queer, I think, and Baldwin was unapologetically himself, even to great detriment. Like, you can, if you look at pictures, you can see it on his face, like the turmoil. And reading the biography that I can't think of the guy's name, his personal secretary near the end of his life, he gave him permission to use his papers and to write a biography. And Baldwin lived a very painful, very sad, very depressing life. Like, he never was really happy in love. He always fell in love with people who were somehow unattainable, male and female. And just that burden of being a witness and the burden of that intellect of seeing and experiencing and trying to get those words out. Like, he wore it. He was a chain smoker. He was probably an alcoholic. He died in old age compared to Martin and Malcolm, but relatively young. He was only in his 60s. But I just know, like, because of people like that, because of voices like that, like, I'm able to smile, to do the work in a much different way. What are some of your, because I remember when I came there to speak to the MLK scholars, there was a lot of, even though they're MLK scholars, there's a lot of scholars who have a negative idea of King, and I completely get it. Do you think the younger generation is harder on King, or why do you think?
I think to me, some of it goes back to how kind of people have viewed King like now. Like I said earlier, like I think that if people really study King's life and what he was doing at the time, I think again, now it's easy for people to say, civil rights, integration, everybody wanted that. A lot of people who even believed in it at the time came back later and said, or believed in segregation at the time would tell you 30 years later that they didn't believe in it. I think for our generation, it's just kind of a perception that King was just in the, like the nonviolent protest, and he just kind of held hands and made a compromise. But again, for you to me, sometimes it takes even a stronger person to not use force or retaliate with the same violence that's being enacted upon them. And then even like for me, one of the things that I admire, even after the civil rights legislation's enacted in 1964, he's still pushing for like the Vietnam War, like talking out against that. And then he's advocating for the poor. So what I'm saying is he doesn't stop. And to me, somebody who's committed to social justice, it's not like, oh, it's just a movement or just a couple years or one issue. It's a lifelong type of thing. And to me, I mean, on so many different levels, he was just in constant pursuit of that. Again, when it just wasn't popular to be speaking out against the Vietnam War and speaking for poor people at that time. So to kind of answer your question, I think a lot of people view him now as just, he was peaceful, he compromised, he just kind of met with people and sacrificed himself and other people for the cause. But again, I mean, that sacrifice was great, and the results were great too, in my opinion.
So there's a pair of books. Taylor Branch wrote 2 books about America during the King years, and they're partitioned. And one is called Pillar of Fire, and one is called Parting the Waters. And like when I was growing up, I imagined, okay, they would come, they would march, they would protest, piss people off. NAACP would sue. Eventually, hearts and minds would change. Legislation would get passed. Then they move on to a different city, a different area. But when you read those books, I don't think history gives people like King and so many others that don't even get named the credit for their political and intellectual like savviness, like that, how smart and strategic they were in what they did. They didn't just piss people off. Like there was a whole movement around where to go, where people already organized and already have something in place that the SCLC, or the Southern Christian Leadership Conference can come in with King as leader, bring the national spotlight to keep the ball rolling, and how they could actually be really, really strategic. And in those books talks about the meetings, the strategy,
Mhm.
the arguments, like King was very intelligent, and he didn't push back when people or when people differed from his opinion. He was a philosopher. He would ask questions, and they would debate, not in an ugly way, but in a how can we change this kind of way. And I don't think, at least as far as my formal education was concerned, I don't think we learned that strategy. Even Malcolm, like, people just thought he
Yeah.
was just talking crazy. He was extremely well read.
Mhm.
He was extremely intelligent. He studied those same philosophers, and he knew religion, not just uh, the NOI, the Nation of Islam, but he
Mhm.
knew world religion, and when you listen and read his speeches, even though he didn't have the formal education of King, like James Baldwin didn't have a formal college education, but they were very intelligent people.
Yeah. And even like to your point about Malcolm, even what he was doing towards the end of his life when he was breaking up with NLI and he was going
Right.
to go before the UN and press charges against the United States for crimes against humanity for their treatment of Black people. I mean, if that case, especially at that time, really gets presented from we could be seeing, you just didn't know what was going to happen. And to me, again, I think the pushback at the time, and the world just wasn't ready for those people. He was he was revolutionary in his thought. And like you said, that's organization. That's not just making crazy statements. That's actually organizing and thinking outside the box, because most people weren't even thinking about that at that time.
Absolutely. And so we frame this context or this conversation in the literature as what we experience as far as race, power, politics. So you, as a 19-year-old person, male, Black male, are you from Louisville?
Yeah, I'm from Louisville.
So from Louisville, even though Louisville is the most northern city in Kentucky, it's still the South, right? And you're 19, and you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at America right now as it actually is in 2020. What do you see? What is your hope for the future? What is, what are you experiencing? What are you thinking as you go into your sophomore year of college? And I'm like, oh my God, that was so long ago for me. But what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What are you thinking right now?
So right now, obviously over the summer and with the coronavirus, a lot has been happening these past 4 months. But just a couple weeks ago, one of my favorite players, LeBron James, he said a quote in his press conference: "Black Lives Matter is not just a movement; it's a lifestyle for Black people." And my hope would be is that people are committed to, and for all people, but specifically, like I'm saying, Black people, because the attention is on us right now. That people are committed in different ways through different formats to helping out people on their different level. Everybody has, in my opinion, a different role. I think if we just start actually seeing the problems that we see every single day, and then we figure out ways how to solve those problems, especially for the groups that are struggling, and look at things from an equitable standpoint compared to like just looking at it from equality. And that comes to politics, comes to everybody's daily lifestyle. That's what I will want to see. And I think that's a lot of what my generation wants to see. Even kind of right now in Kentucky, one of the problems with the Breonna Taylor case is you have an attorney general who's so focused on politics and his own political aspirations that he sacrificed the right thing to do. And the right thing to do would be transparent about the Breonna Taylor case. The right thing to do would be calling her mother. And I think seeing more politicians, even I'm really excited about AOC, that are authentic and really committed to doing the right thing. And they've shown that throughout their whole life, the consistency, not just when it's popular and when everybody's saying it. So if I had to sum that up in one word, I would say consistency to social justice and really envisioning what this country hopes to be, as far as America, one nation committed together with all different types of people. I think the only way you do that is to make sure that all people are included in this environment. So that's what I would like to see.
Do we have a question?
We do. So, I mean, rhetorical, but interesting nonetheless. How much of the thinking outside of the box or the deliberate organization, the demand that they be taken seriously got Martin Luther King and Malcolm X killed, specifically asking in the context of the maybe less centralized protesting as the asker is seen today?
That's a really good question, and it's also it should be noted that even though the Southern Christian Leadership Conference had Martin Luther King and was leading a lot of the big national, King would come in and bring a national spotlight to a situation, that it was still, even though there were conferences throughout the country, there were branches of the SCLC throughout the country, it was still pretty much a decentralized movement. It was people in their individual areas or towns or communities doing the work, and then King would come in to help them to raise money or raise awareness and bring the power of the SCLC to help them along. It wasn't, because that's one of the things that always pisses me off when people ask me, so who's the Black leaders of today? And I'm like, every Black person that breathes. Like, there's no, like, we don't have like a leader. And some of the racist stuff that I get on my Facebook is, people are, well, you all listen to Jesse Jackson and you all listen to Al Sharpton, and it just shows how disconnected people are to Black people or to reality. Because I love Barack Obama. I think he did some stuff wrong as president. Like this whole idea that all Black people follow step in line with all Black people, that ain't what happened 50 years ago under King. It's not what's happening. It was not what's happening now. I think King was killed because he started talking about redistributing America's wealth. The last 2-3 years of King's life, he was on this poor people's campaign. This notice it's recently been picked up. There was a tent city in DC. There was going to be another March on Washington because King said the same thing I say. Unfettered capitalism hurts white people, Black people, brown people, people in the slums of the North, people in the shacks of the South. It hurts everybody when half the world's wealth is controlled by 1% of the world's population. And I think, so anytime you get to messing with capitalism, anytime you get to talking about redistributing wealth, I think that's why King was killed. I think Malcolm was killed because he was giving a lot of truth about the organization that he helped to build, the Nation of Islam. And he found out that they were not as blameless as he wanted them to be. And he started speaking out about their leaders' infidelities and having kids all over the place. And so, yeah, now, decent, less centralized protesting, I believe in. I don't know how you feel about that, Gordon, but this whole idea of Black people getting together, deciding what all Black people should do, and then dispatch, that's not how it works.
Yeah, as far as the decentralized protest, I agree with your point earlier about King. And I think even now, some people have problems with figureheads, with people who are quote unquote Black leaders. I don't think that's a problem until, like what you said, where people just associate the whole movement or just associate everything that's said with that person. because people are just, I mean, people are going to make mistakes. They're going to say the wrong things. And I mean, some people, they're going to say things that maybe the whole, or like all Black people just don't believe. So I think that's the problem. And when you put and invest everybody's kind of opinion in one person. But as far as what you said about Malcolm and I completely agree. But I also believe too, and that's just kind of me, but the FBI at that time, led by J. Edgar Hoover, was blatantly planning different things. They had clearly infiltrated multiple civil rights movements. And even with King, they had taken pictures of his affair and sent it to his wife. And with Malcolm, I mean, I remember somebody said that Malcolm had more FBI and police in his inner circle than he did actually people that were with Malcolm's inner circle. So I think it was that combination with, like you said, with the Nation of Islam. But certain things I always believed in, especially with Malcolm's death, the Nation of Islam didn't have that kind of power and structure just to know how they set it up. No police being there at the ballroom, even how the investigation was handled after. There's just a lot of holes in it. And even same thing with King. But that's more on the conspiracy side of things. But definitely they're speaking out and what they were about to do, like you said, because it was just revolutionary. It wasn't just fighting one issue. I mean, people could not, there was a large group amount of people that they weren't ready for that at that time. So
you actually, you actually bring up a really good point about, and it's not necessarily even conspiracy. Like, we know for a fact that the FBI infiltrated so once Malcolm left the Nation of Islam, he started the MMI, Muslim Mosque Incorporated. And we know for a fact, there are files that the FBI had paid informants that were really close to Malcolm. And we know that there were people that were purposely saying stuff, doing stuff to hurt Malcolm and Martin's credibility, to hurt their standing within the organizations. And that's true. That's the government. That is the government actually influencing what happens. And you're right. We can't hold them accountable that there's been a concerted effort throughout the history of this country of hurting people of color by any means necessary, to quote Malcolm.
Because even Fred Hampton, who people don't know about, but even if you study what he was doing as far as coalitions and organizing people together, people of different races, I mean, was incredible. And he shot down in his apartment in the middle of the night 8 times by the police. And I mean, there's no justification for it. So I think somebody said that in one documentary I was watching. I mean, during that time, you're basically looking at a whole wave of Black leadership that basically people wiped out. I mean, FBI or not, I mean, it was gone during that time. So some of the problems after, I mean, I just can't imagine what would happen if some of those people were still alive, what solutions or different things would have happened. But yeah.
Absolutely.
I have someone who wants to ask a question live but wasn't able to find the hand raise button. Can I pass to Kathy?
Absolutely.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my question is for both of you guys, Reverend Derek and Gordon. So I'm a woman in my 40s, and I have learned a lot in the last 2 months since George Floyd was killed. And it's like I'm constantly being shocked by all of this history that I didn't know. And so my question to both of you is, thinking about the past 2 months or little more than 2 months, what are some things that have surprised you both about the way that the Black Lives Movement is manifesting itself in our country now?
You want to take it first, Gordon?
Yeah, I can take it first. So one of the things that shocked me, because for Black Lives Matter, a lot of people know, like, this has been around, especially like Black Lives Matter with social media, since you could date it back to Trayvon Martin in 2011. and then it kind of elevated. And there's been multiple different instances, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, where people have kind of said, a lot of Black people have said Black Lives Matter, and some white people have also. But I think at this time, I said this on the last call, combined with the coronavirus, with when everybody had time to see this. And in my opinion, with Breonna Taylor happening in March, people had kind of heard about that. And then Ahmaud Arbery, that kind of happened. And then to me, George Floyd was kind of that just like explosion of people like finally realizing, wow, like this is actually happening. And like I said, people, they couldn't go like back to their jobs or back to their normal routine and just ignore it this time. I mean, it was right there in front of their face. And what shocked me about that is just kind of how different groups, even companies, have not just said Black Lives Matter, but I've seen companies and different groups and people kind of put their money where their mouth is and put their time and effort where their mouth is. I saw yesterday that Jeff Bezos' ex-wife gave like one of the largest donations ever to HBCUs. And I mean, again, that's putting, your time and effort. So I just say the response is pretty incredible. And I hope that response kind of just maintains through the course of future years, and people don't just only do this temporarily while everybody focuses on it.
I'll tell you, for me, the biggest surprise, I don't know if surprise is the word, but my biggest frustration, my biggest worry, my biggest concern is the federal government's response to what's going on right now. And when I say federal government's response, I mean the response to coronavirus and the health and economic fallout. I mean, right now, tomorrow, people are going to lose that bump of $600 a week. And even our government, like no one in the government said, well, most states are on the Saturday system of unemployment. So to stop it on Friday, you're literally you're like, last week, that was the last check that a lot of people are going to get with this bump. And so that bothers me. And it's not, everyone wants to blame stuff on the president if you're not on his team. And for me, the failure is not the president. Like, he's consistently been exactly who he said he was going to be when he came down that escalator and called Mexicans rapists. Like, if nothing else, he's made the movie he wanted to make. Like, he's done exactly what he wanted to do. My concern is that out of the other two branches of government is that people haven't risen up to say, you can't do this. Like, you can't, 150,000 Americans died to COVID. And our leader just started telling people to wear a mask. Like in any other president, in any other party, this would not have been allowed to happen. Moreover, we have seen unmarked federal agents beating people, arresting people, kidnapping people. And people are just like, literally, there are elected officials that are justifying this. We've seen, just this week, the Attorney General of the United States support violently cronyism with the president. Like he literally gets back at the president's enemies. He literally lets off the president's supporters. Like, to me, all of that in the middle of pandemic, and people trying to take away Obamacare, not just saying it, but literally sending government resources to fight against people having health insurance in the middle of a pandemic. All of this, and people are not saying anything because there's an election and because this, like, to me, this is the scariest This is the scariest shit ever. The hope and the exciting part is when I saw those middle-aged white women in Portland come out in their yellow shirts and say no. And when you know the racist history of Oregon, to see that happening is powerful. And so the only thing that's going to make me happy, oh, I see a hand up. The only thing that's going to make me happy is if that energy proliferates around the country and we say, no, you cannot send federal troops to our communities. No, you cannot keep doing this. Ron?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. That is exactly a question that I wanted to ask from the beginning of this. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. How much of the wall of moms and, the dads with leaf blowers, whatever was going on out there, how much of that do you guys feel, you and Gordon both being of the younger generation, is saviorism versus actual allies? And that's all I'm going to ask.
That's a good question. Gordon,
Yeah.
You want to go since I was talking last?
Yeah. So to me, that's a very good question. A lot of people don't bring up that point. But to me is, again, it's what we put emphasis or how much we credit them with what they're doing. To me, that's a first step in what they're doing, and they should be applauded for that. But at the same time, it's not going to be a solution like that. It's a demonstration. I think, again, like you said, Black people have demonstrated about this for years, and nobody's heard their voice. So just because you're an ally and you demonstrate and people see you, or that's just a reaction, that's just the first step. It's a consistent type of action. And you demonstrating, like I said, it's a baseline action to me. And I just hope that people, like I said, applaud them for it. It's a good step in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it is not a solution in the end all for this problem.
Exactly. And so what has to happen, Jesse Jackson used to say it takes tree shakers and jelly makers. And what he meant by that is, on the demonstration side, someone has to shake stuff up, right? So you shake the trees. When you shake the tree, what happens? All the fruit comes down. Well, that's the demonstration. So now you got all this fruit. Well, then someone has to then pick up all the fruit and process it and wash it and make the jelly and can it and put it on the shelves. And so it's not just, it's both and, right? You have to agitate. That's how you get people's attention. That's how this country was founded, was pissing people off. And so you have to agitate, but then you have to have the people that do the work of picking everything up, sorting everything out. And we all have our roles, right? There are some people who are really good at agitating, at protesting, and again, I'll go back to King and parting the waters. In all the magazines, you see King on the front line walking. Typically what happened was King showed up. He was a morale booster. He, got everybody all excited. They took pictures, they grabbed him, threw him in the back of a car, and sent him to give a speech because the movement needed money. And who's your best money maker? Who's the person who's going to get the money for the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund? Who's the person who's going to raise the money for the bail bond? Who do people want to see? It's King. And so all those people whose names are not in the history books, all those tree shakers were extremely important. But it also takes the attorneys, the strategists, those individuals. And so as it relates to, is it saviorism? I don't think it is. I think that it's going to take white people and Black people to fix what's broken in this country. And not just it's going to take, it has to take. It's not just it's not just a Black problem. It is an American problem. And so everyone has to show up, use whatever skill set, whatever privilege, whatever power they have to help dismantle this stuff that's taking place. Ta-Nehisi Coates in Between the World and Me reminds Black people that no revolution, no change ever takes place with just the people being oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were abolitionists were beaten, white abolitionists were beaten and were killed. And in the civil rights movement, white people were beaten and blown up and lynched. People put their lives on the line, and it's important that they show up. Now, if you show up because it's popular, you show up to take your Black Lives Matter selfie, and you show up to post on Instagram, and then when the news story has changed, you no longer show up. Then you have to ask yourself, was I serious? Or was I just trying to do what was popular? But to stand on the side of the oppressed, when you're white, you don't have to go through the shit that Black and brown and indigenous people have to go through. And so for you to say, I want to make a change, I want this situation to get better, means that you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation repeatedly because you want to change things for all of us. It's not just about the feel good, the look good. This ain't easy. Did you have something, Gordon?
Yeah, I mean, just what you were saying. It's going, especially with the way things are set up. Black people don't have the power to change certain systems. So, we're living in a society where it is a white power structure. So, white people realizing the power that they have and using that power to make change. I mean, like he said about Ta-Nehisi Coates, that's extremely relevant. It's going to take a village. It's going to take all people of different races, generations, again, to really come together. And if we want to preach this idea of democracy and unity and uniformity within America, then that's what we should be striving for, helping the people that don't have some of the power and resources that other people have. And it's not going to be a utopia, but we at least have to try, in my opinion, to help the person that's on the bottom, or the people that are on the bottom.
Absolutely. We have some stuff.
Can I go to some chat questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if I start at the top, Elaine asked, what do you see is the biggest contributor to political alienation in Gen X and millennial Black men? And what can the community do to address it? And then she names that she hasn't seen the same alienation in Gen Z.
What do I see is the biggest contributor political alienation of Gen X and millennial Black men? They are afraid of us. I think that's polite to say. I think a lot of people don't know what to do with Black men, especially if you don't know or haven't been around a lot of Black men. You know what you see on television, what you think about Black men. The average Black man is not the average Black man that is portrayed on television. The average Black man is chill. He gets up, he goes to work, he has a relationship. I mean, that's the way it is. And they also don't, and as far as I'm concerned, people don't ask, what do Black men need? What do Black men want? And how many Black men are at the table? Usually when people are talking about the Black vote, especially as it relates to Black men, especially when we see the president, it's in, I've done all this for Black people, look what I did for prison reform. I've never been to prison. I don't plan on going to prison. My father's a cop. He doesn't plan on going to prison. Like nobody in my immediate family. I'm not saying the prison reform was not necessary and something that is good for a lot of Black and brown people. But if you only view the context of helping Black people through helping poor people, helping poor Blacks, or helping those who are incarcerated, that language just shows you have no idea about the regular Black people, like the Gordons, and people are just out of touch. What do you think, Gordon?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. To me, a lot of people when they view black politicians, I even say this about President Obama, they have to be like they can't be too radical or too outspoken to me about like black issues. Because even President Obama, people accepted President Obama largely, in fact, in my opinion, because he was a little bit more moderate. He didn't come out and say, "This is what I'm gonna do for black people. This is my plan." So for people, it's kind of like he's easy. He's kind of the approachable black guy. But you know, every black person that believes in solving black issues or believes in helping out, you know, black men or whatever is not radical and just this outspoken, dangerous type of person. So to me, that's what I see a lot of times, especially in politics. Now I think it's changing somewhat because I believe that the political environment's going to change. To me, President Trump was just a culmination of politics and rhetoric that had been pushed for years during the Obama years, during the Bush years for years by sides. And it's just kind of that culmination. He's a representative of that. He just comes out and says what people have been saying for years in their own covert ways. So to me, in the future, I think that politics and people will start seeing politicians to me based off of how authentic they are. That's why I think people have an attraction to AOC. She kind of stands by where she is. She's committed to her issues. She's unapologetic, but she's still intelligent and composed about it. I think, again, people need to realize that you can be, you know, intelligent, composed, and committed to your issues, and not just like a flip-flop politician that we see a lot of times where, you know, a couple years ago you were for this, now you're for that. People just kind of playing both sides. So I hope that it will kind of shift to more of an authentic system, and people even just drop the whole party or left and right type of affiliation, so we can actually get things done in this country.
That is so on par with every Gen Zer that I personally have talked to. The two-party system is a huge, like bug in the beard for a lot of people. Elaine, I saw your hand up, and then we can go back to the chat.
Yeah, thanks for. No, I think that what I meant is, and especially you, Derek, because you are a Gen X, is that, there are a lot of Gen X Black men that are politically alienated. And I wanted to know what is contributing and what has contributed, do you feel, to them being politically alienated? And this is going back 10 and 20 years from when I taught in the jail.
What do you mean alienated? Like
I can understand they don't feel the system works, but from the people of my age, the boomers, they felt that they can contribute to the system, and they believed in the system as far as voting and things like that. Whereas the Gen X men did not at all. They totally turned off by the political system.
Okay, now I understand exactly what you mean. And that's very true. And I've had conversations with plenty of friends and in the barbershop and just in all kinds of settings. And usually what you hear is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If there's a Republican in office, I'm screwed. If there's a Democrat in office, I'm screwed. And that's the way systemic racism works, right? You elect a Black president, and all those negative things that happen to Black people across the board keep happening because they are woven into our country. And so when people, that's exactly what people think. And we saw in the last election, a lot of people didn't vote because they didn't think, well, what difference does it make if I vote? What's going to happen? And honestly, I used to feel like that. I still vote because I still vote. But what I tell my friends and what I tell people, I always go back to Selma. Like literally in the South, and not just in the South, but in the North too. But in the South, there were people elected, sheriffs that were elected officials that were literally using government resources to attack and kill Black people. Once they won the right to vote, they always had the right to vote, but once they secured their ability to vote, they literally elected officials that did not beat or kill them. Now, yeah, there's still issues, right? This is not a perfect situation, but that happened, that changed. We're seeing right now, I mean, for years, I thought, oh, it doesn't matter who's the president. The president doesn't have that much power. But I have seen in these last 3-4 years, just how much power and how much influence the president has. We see how much power prosecutors have. We see judges, what they're able to do. And so whenever my friends get to talking all that stuff, I'm like, listen, this is why it is important. But when you feel like you're always outnumbered, when you feel like you're always outgunned, how it doesn't matter, you always make less than, you're always scraping, it can feel really alienating. And it's hard to overcome that. But because people don't feel like they care. Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah. Speaking of that point, to me, sometimes it is also the structural system. Like, even look at the Electoral College. So
right.
Technically, if we went by the popular vote, Hillary Clinton would have been the president last time. According to she won the popular vote. But the Electoral College, like, if I vote in Kentucky, it doesn't matter. Kentucky's going red either way. So a lot of people have figured that out in one sense. And I think another sense, it's a sad statistic. 1 in 3 Black men, I think that's the stat. 1 in 3 Black men are incarcerated or have been incarcerated. And if you check like laws and legislation in most states, there's a law that ex-cons cannot vote. So that's 33% of the Black man or the Black male population. They cannot vote due to them being incarcerated or sometimes as previously incarcerated, depending on the crime. So I think some of these things we have to look at. And if you have 33% and people don't vote anyway, or people still have a distrust, like Derek was saying, of the government, then that's a 66% kind of pool you're pulling from. That's not going to be that many people. So I think that's kind of contributing to a lot of the alienation you see as well.
And we're seeing that in Florida right
Yes.
now. I contributed, I'm a broke preacher. I gave a couple $100 to that referendum to get ex-cons, what is it, 1 million ex-cons in Florida, so that they're able to vote. And what happens as soon as, like, the Florida legislature could care less about what was going on. They didn't want to take up anything about it. But as soon as the public voted to re-enfranchise these people, now all of a sudden the Florida legislature is saying, well, they need to pay all their fines. And it's made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and then and the Supreme Court upheld that. And that's what I'm saying. To me, right now, we're seeing a failure of our government to do what the checks and balances was installed to do. And that is super scary to me. I saw another hand. Rob?
How can you guys even keep it together? If I was in your shoes, I'd be insane. I mean, you're talking about Florida, and I remember exactly that. And the hurdles that keep getting placed and placed and placed. The patience and the perseverance is incredible. Okay, bye. I've been chatting with Kate on the side about wanting to jump in on all this stuff because all of this stuff infuriates me. And I'm gonna shut up now.
No, that's a really good question. There are times, like, I remember when George Zimmerman got off for killing Trayvon Martin. I remember when I first saw the video of Tamir Rice, like, that dash cam video and, seconds. I remember I was in a restaurant in Cincinnati. If you're in Cincinnati, you'll know the name Sam DuBose, who was killed by a police officer wearing a Confederate flag t-shirt under his uniform, and he got off twice. I remember I was at a restaurant working on a sermon, and they showed this clip on the news. And there's something that happens, like when you talk about trauma, like what we experience as relates to race, power, politics, and the trauma of me waking up and looking at my cell phone, trying to figure out what is this? What is this video I keep seeing on Facebook? And it's Philando Castile dying, right? Or George Floyd with someone on his neck. There's a trauma that occurs, especially when you have to pay the government for your DNA to find out where you come from, right? Because your ancestors were chattel, and their blood, literally blood, sweat, and tears is in this country, like built this country, built buildings that the government still uses, that colleges still use, that they built as slaves. And there's something that happens, but there's also a strength that comes from knowing who people say that I am is not who I am. Like, I'm a big Black man. Gordon is, thin. I'm big. I've been big my whole life. I walk into the store and people stop and look and, follow me around. And they have their perception of who they think I am as the big Black guy. I could be violent. I could, be ex-con. Sometimes I get treated well. They think I'm a retired Bengals player. That's a good one, right? But they have these perceptions of who they think I am. And it's powerful to me to know the long line of education in my family, the long line of entrepreneurship in my family, the long line of activism in my family. And to know that my ancestors were literally brought to this country as property, and I'm their wildest dreams, and all the things that I'm able to do, and it fuels you in a way, and you become oblivious. You don't listen. You don't pay attention to all of that. You use all that negativity to fuel the stuff, and you use it to piss people off. Like, I know when I show up intelligent, and it pisses racists off, and it pisses homophobics off, and it does all these things. Like, you don't even care. And so that I have white friends that ask me all the time, like, oh my God, how do you do this? You have no choice. You either do this or you lose your freaking mind. And you talk to your friends, you watch movies, you listen to music. Like, there is something, Du Bois talks about it in The Souls of Black Folk. Like, there's a soul, there's a charisma, there's an energy that Black people brought to this country that they don't even know they need. A swagger, as it were. Like, when you see everything that Barack and Michelle went through and how they smiled and laughed and danced, and it's that survival apparatus, and it's a gift. That's what I told my church when I first got there. Like, you can learn something from the Black church. Like, there's a gift. There is a gift from that type of struggle that some seasoning that we bring into the situation. What do you think, Gordon? Why don't we go crazy?
Yeah, as far as your thing, the patience, for me personally, I love history because history kind of can teach us a lot of things. So for me personally, I always think back to kind of just slavery, and I just always admire the strength and the courage and the tenacity it took for a people to overcome that. I mean, I'm talking about people, generations of them seeing the same system and the same oppression, and their granddaughters and great-granddaughters and great-grandsons, witness this horrific kind of system. So for me now, we still have problems, but for me, there is more opportunity than there was then. And for me, it's kind of a power in knowing, as Derek said, that I come from kind of a strong people who can overcome anything. Because, I mean, most people, as you said, most people in certain situations, they just don't come out the same. And I mean, Black people, through everything that we've been through and continue to go through, we kind of still just come out. We're just a tenacious, resilient people. So like Derek said, that is kind of the strength that I have. Now, there is struggle sometimes where it is like, man, it's hopeless, or it feels kind of like, you know, the same things that were happening when my grandfather was like a teenager are happening right now. My grandfather was born in 1941. And he was about 14 years old when Emmett Till was horrifically murdered. And now, I mean, Ahmaud Arbery in 2020 was murdered while he was jogging. So Black people are still getting killed just innocently. And I saw yesterday where the attorney said that his client, the attorney for the guy who killed Ahmaud Arbery, said that his client was making, I think he said, a lawful citizen's arrest. And just again, that people would defend something so heinous like that is just absurd. But so it's kind of a constant struggle between feeling that kind of resiliency and that power, but also sometimes, like I said, when you see things like that, it's kind of like, wow, you know, what's really going on still?
For me, I remember there was a time when I quit college. It was a joke because I just didn't go to class for 1 week. I was tired. I was like, you know what, freak this. And I thought about my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother is from Shelby County, Kentucky. Small county. At the time she was there, they didn't have a high school for Black people. So thankfully there was a boarding school in Kentucky for Black students to go to for high school if you did not have a high school in your county. And my great-grandmother graduated college in 1928 along with 9 of her siblings. And I'm like, if my great-grandmother, a woman from rural Kentucky in 1928, could become a nurse, like what reason can I think of in 2002 to not be able to do this? And yeah, you deal with racism and you deal with all that stuff, but I'm like, if she could do it 90 years ago, there's no excuse for why I can't today. And that's Frederick Douglass said, without struggle there is no progress. And boy, Black people, the struggles we have seen, and to use that to fuel. And that's why stories are so important to us. And that's why, you know, music and family and community is so important, because that's how you build that up. You know, that's how you solidify it. And when you feel like quitting, somebody says, nah, boy, you hang in there because, you know, our ancestors died so you can do this. I mean, that's what happens in my family. That's what happens in my friend circle. And it's a gift. There was a question, Kate, that was really long, so I didn't read it, but it was something about religion. And that's my favorite thing to talk about.
It wasn't a question. It's just a statement. And the person who said it isn't here anymore, so I can't even ask them to articulate. But I can read it out loud if you want.
I was about to say, yeah, does it, like, okay, go ahead.
So it says, I would like to say we must stop having the mindset about religion and race because of the leadership of MLK and the others that helped fight for all people. They try to show us that if we come together as one people, we will see that the government are the ones who practice and promote racism and hate in order to govern the people, because it's the only way they can control the people of all cultures. Because if we work together as a people of diversity and culture and faith, or whatever the case may be, the government will stop saying it's about their understanding and their own way, because we don't stand up against the power and the courts and the big corporations. They are the problem, meaning all those things they just listed, not the people.
Dang. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it means. Do you know what it means, Kate? Because if not, we'll just move forward.
I mean, the things that I can pull out are that a focus on any singular person and what they're doing and the dimensions of their identity, like let's say MLK's faith, makes it seem like, well, race or racism is a Christian issue. And it's like, well, it's actually a human issue, right? And that when we direct our attention to individuals and who they are or aren't and what they are doing or not doing, we continue to fight amongst ourselves instead of working to dismantle the systems and structures that are really controlling us behind the scenes.
Agree with that 1,000%.
Yeah, me too.
Right on.
Is there anything else in there? Meg, is that your hand up?
Yeah, so I do have a couple like chat backlogs. Meg had a question, Sarah had a question, she had her hand up. Meg, you want to give voice to yours?
You're on
Hold
mute,
on, I
Meg.
can unmute you.
I was
There
going
you
to
go.
There you
advocate
go.
for Sarah's question.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
This was
cool.
in order, which is where do we go next? Maybe that one you could address, Kate.
Sure. Sarah, I saw your hand up a little while. Do you want to give voice to it? I can unmute you. There you go.
I think we are at a moment where we can get moving again, and I really believe that John Lewis saw it, that it was spontaneous when we had had enough of killing on camera. I certainly know that I engaged my police department here in Highland Heights, Kentucky, immediately. 4 days after I witnessed the killing on camera, I sent a letter to the chief of police with copies to the city council and to the mayor. And I said, what have you done this week to address bias and unnecessary force in the police force here in Highland Heights? What would you have done differently in Minneapolis? And I included a few other things, and I met with them. I am following up. I have a meeting on Tuesday because I want to know about Fourth Amendment rights here in Highland Heights, because we have a police dog that's used for searches 80 times 2 years ago. No, 90 times 2 years ago and 80 times this past year. So I want to know what's going on with that. Did they have warrants? I want to know about the warrant, the latest information that I can get on Louisville and Breonna Taylor and why we're not moving forward on that. So here's the thing. We've got people motivated again to do something. From the beginning, the NAACP was interracial.
Mhm.
John Lewis knew that nothing is going to happen until we get everybody moving. So my big question, and I really think it's a significant one, is we have 90 days to get people to vote. We elected a president that uncovered the underbelly of the United States, which has been there. We just haven't, he's given voice to it. He gave voice to all of my high school classmates in Iowa. I'm 77 years old, by the way. So I am speaking, and I came from a town in Iowa where Black people couldn't get their hair cut at the local barber shop. So I know about this. And we have a singular moment right now, and I think the most important thing we can do is get the vote out, because if we cannot get Trump, who is top down guiding ugly people, if we cannot get him out of office, we might as well just, throw our hands up in the air. So what I want to know is what organization or person is going to take the lead to get the vote out? That's our most powerful weapon. And if we don't vote because we have an attitude of it doesn't matter in Kentucky, then that is wrong. I really believe that. So where's the leadership going to come from?
So here's what I think, and this is what I try to be consistent in my message, because I can get really excited and go all over. But as far as I'm concerned, just a couple of things. One is I think what we've seen in 2020 is what people have said along, is that Trump is a symptom of a old problem that won't go away, right? So I as a liberal Democrat, I definitely want him out of office. But I think the work is really starting in our communities, in working out like our individual stuff. So our level of influence, like Sarah, like you're saying, talking to the officials, people in your community, influencing that change. I do think voting is important, but I think all the systems, the economic systems in this country are racist, the political systems in this country are racist, the judicial systems in this country are racist, the educational systems in this country are racist. And so all of those things, and we each have different passion. And so to me, it's not which can we fix, it's if there's a giant we're trying to take down, let's all attack each and every limb that it has until we can get it down. So my passion may be education. So that's where I'm giving my money. That's where I'm volunteering. That's where I'm working. I think each of us have to find that thing that we like, that resonates with us, that we feel compassionate about, and we find out the work that's going on in our community, the work that we can support, what we can do. Meg, one of the most awesome people I know, as far as I know, without help, she'll get a stack of voter registration cards and a clipboard and just go to Kroger and talk to voters. That's not everyone's personality, but all of us can do something, and it's what you're willing to do, what you're able to do. And it's not just in fair weather, it's not just when someone gets killed and it's on television. It has to be a part of who you are. Like, I know when I see Meg, I can get voter registration cards. Gordon, what do you think? What do we do? What can we do?
I completely agree with you. To me, again, even on the voting front, even if you are disgusted with how the two-party system works, still voting is extremely important. But even what you were saying, as far as the police on a local and state level, right now with Breonna Taylor, part of the reason why Kentucky's been so ineffective in that investigation is because the Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, does not care, and we elected him just last year. That's part of the problem, and he's in there for another 3 years. Another part of the problem.
He's black.
And he's black, yeah.
It's not just about the color. Yeah. It's because,
and then another, our mayor, who has kind of evaded some of the blame in recent weeks to Daniel Cameron, he's just a part of the problem. I mean, locally, even his response to protesters and to actual police reform has just been ineffective. And so I think on a local, state, and national level, and then to what Derek said, even what we're seeing right now with the coronavirus, with healthcare inequities. I have a lot of friends who are going into medicine, and that's part of their passion, is to solve some of the healthcare inequities that we see in our system. And one thing that I've always advocated for is universal healthcare. It's ridiculous that if a vaccine happens in February, certain people that actually need it, which are Black and brown people, that are disproportionately affected, certain people, because of our income levels in this economic system of oppression, they won't be able to get it because of the privatization of healthcare. So like Derek was saying, that's just an example, but we have to attack each system every day, every week, consistently, because it's going to take a village. But as far as voting, to me, and especially with Trump and some other politicians, certain judges, elected officials, that can be an immediate thing. But we have to look, to me, in the present with voting in certain elections, but also in the future with dismantling certain systems.
And how do you know, Meg, you might be able to help me on this one, because in Ohio, parties aren't listed for certain elected officials. And so we always talk about the importance of judges and the importance of like prosecutors and those. How do you find what people are for? How do you do that research? Because I think it's important to actually not just vote, but actually vote your conscience, vote your passion, vote your what you believe in. And how do you find that?
I'm sorry, Ginger. We just lost Ginger.
Oh wow.
Ginger is, as many of you know, is in fact running for judge in Hamilton County. So she would have been much more qualified than I to say how to find out about her and the other people who are running. The main thing is, first of all, you have to get the names of the people who are running, which you can get from your county board of elections, right? Because it's going to come down to the local level. Some of it's going to be city judges, municipal judges, county, and then all the way up to your state Supreme Court. So what's going to be on your ballot, the Board of Elections in your county can tell you. That'll give you the names. Then the first thing really to do is check out their campaign websites. I mean, see what they have to say for themselves. You'd be surprised how often that'll tell you and what you need to know. You read it and it's like, oh my God, they're not appealing to my values. And then you could talk to them. Especially at the county level, there are a lot, especially now that we're all stuck inside. Everybody I know who's a candidate is doing Zoom town halls or Zoom meet and greets. And that's the easiest way. And everybody has their own campaign website. In Hamilton County and in most other places, judges have one campaign manager for all the judges. So it's easy for us as voters to talk to them as a group and see how they're the same or different. Ones that are endorsed by the Democrats, which are the ones that I work for. They are working together in our county because they want some specific reform, like to end the cash bail system. They're all committed to certain things that just by them being Democrats, you wouldn't necessarily know that in our county, those are the kind of things they've decided they're all going to help each other and support that. And we also have the prosecutor, Fanon Rucker, who's running, and Aftab Piraval and Charmaine McGuffey, she's running for sheriff. Those three are running together because they see it as what Gordon said, is they're not just running as individuals. They think that the whole criminal justice system needs to change, and they're committed to that. So they want to be elected as a group. So they have the power as a group already with very specific commitments. But the easiest way to find out about it really is Zoom into their town hall meetings. And I wanted to add something else. I do think that within that broader arc, Eric, that you always talk about, like the systems where we are that are going to be there, before the election, during the election, and after the election, part of that broader arc is always still the election itself. And so people who want to get out the vote this time, if you live anywhere near Hamilton County, Ohio, we're working our tails off now to get vote by mail applications into people's hands, because otherwise you have to print it off your computer yourself, or you have to get it mailed to you personally by the Board of Elections. So we are targeting certain neighborhoods and dropping those off at people's houses, along with the slate of candidates, because the judges, it doesn't say if you're a Democrat or Republican. So you get the card at your door that says, these are the judges, and it won't say D next to their names, but these are the ones for reform. And the literature says what reforms they want. So if you want to be one of those people that don't talk to people because of COVID, we go around in masks, you have it's very easy. You have targeted doors because we know where these voters are. Most of them now are targeted majority African-American communities. And it's easy to pick up a clipboard and leave the right literature there, and it'll make a difference. People grin at you, they put their thumbs up, don't worry, I'll vote. They ask for extra forms. So yeah, we're on the ground every weekend. So you can contact me, or you can contact Hamilton County Democratic Party, or Ginger for that matter.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. That's something that I started. My very first political campaign that I ever worked for, if you're in Louisville, Mike Ward, he ran against, I can see her face. He was running for Congress. He didn't win, but I was like in the 8th grade passing out leaflets. And in college, I worked on a couple of failed gubernatorial campaigns. There's something about just showing up and, and digging in. And of course, when Obama was running in Louisville, in Kentucky, we knew he couldn't ever win Kentucky, but it was just, there was something powerful about seeing him get elected and, him sending, invitations to the inauguration because we had given money, we had organized, we had, fought. It's something really powerful. And so the election, and then again, pick those things. If you're for gun reform, if you're, whatever those things that are passionate to you, you pick those things and you fight for them and you vote for them and you champion for them and you chat for them and you send money to them and you do all those things, your civil duty as a responsible citizen. And it does make you feel, it tends to help you feel a little more invested in what's going on at the election, where those judges and you're cheering. I remember the first time I voted for president was for Kerry. And I'm, this is one of my first times voting and I'm looking at the ballot like, who in the hell are these people? So I'm trying to, vote for the women and vote, like I'm doing all these things where it's just so much better when you feel empowered and you've done the research. Do you have anything else overall in general to add, Gordon? I think you've been awesome per usual.
Yeah, no, not really. You pretty much covered it all. Yeah.
We see great things for you. And so I'm going to continue to be your friend so that when you do those great things, I'll be able to call in a favor. No, but yeah, it's just, I'm really, really super excited that you are at the University of Louisville and that you're going into your sophomore year. It's impressive. And I wish you, I think everyone wishes you well in all of your endeavors. And we're going to continue to put pressure on the powers that be to do the right thing. Breonna Taylor was asleep in her own apartment, in her own bed, and she was killed. And that's not right. And it's not right. And someone has to at least stand and answer for that. And so continue to fight the good fight. Kate, thank you so much for your help and leadership and helping us to stay on task. Thank you all so much for joining the conversation. We're going to take a couple of weeks off. Ginger, we're actually working with Ginger to do a panel to talk about racism in the judicial system. So we're working on getting judges and attorneys and all a nice little panel together so that we can talk about, sometimes people don't realize what a prosecutor does, what a sheriff does, and how their position can impact how inmates are treated, their health care, who goes to jail for what, for why, for how long. And unfortunately, anything that's bad disproportionately hurts Black, brown, and poor people. And so we're super, super, super excited about that. And thank you all for hanging around for this conversation. You can save the chat. And Gordon, did you need to say anything else before we go?
No, just thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody else for listening. It's an important conversation. So
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and for sharing your mind, Gordon.
Definitely.
Thank you.
If anyone's not on a computer and needs me to email them the chat, please drop your email in the chat in the next 30 seconds or so, and I will send it to you this evening.
I wish I was as confident and cool as Gordon when I was 19.